In today's agenda, we will be talking about synthetic transaction monitoring, which in fact is to help us understand how different components of your website function when they interact with each other during a particular transaction, and how we can use this information to make sure that the browsing experience or the user experience while accessing your app is smooth. We will try to understand how a typical user would try to interact with your site, to try to analyze the behavioral patterns that a typical user might take while navigating through your site. And then we will also understand how Applications Manager helps you monitor your servers running in different locations, call them branch offices located in different parts of the world, with a single parent console with the help of agents that collect and periodically transmit data to your parent admin setup. And in the end, we will try to leverage all of these insights in order to ensure that we are able to deliver uninterrupted service and an unmatched experience to user while browsing through our web application. So once again, a quick look at the web application architecture that we had seen in part 1 as well. So once again, we know that a typical web application architecture consists of components that you can see in this slide right here. So what we are going to do is, in week 1, we perform the first logical step, that is to discover the servers and then talk about categorizing and monitoring them. So what we are going to do today is begin at the bottom, that is with websites, and then proceed to see a bit about web servers, and then again in the following weeks we will be covering other components, that is the application servers and DB servers, and then in this context try to visualize how Applications Manager solves our monitoring purposes. So let's quickly move to the first topic of today's agenda, which will begin with website monitoring. Now, as you can see from this slide on your screen, within Applications Manager, website monitoring is facilitated with the help of numerous different types of monitors. Now, the first one, as you can see here, is the URL monitor, followed by the URL sequence monitor, and a whole module called end user monitoring, which packs the interesting features of real browser monitor as well as the URL content monitor. So a brief introduction about these 4 monitors first. That is, as the name suggests, the URL monitor helps you monitor the performance in terms of the response time and other metrics when it comes to a particular URL or a website that you might have. Now, the URL sequence monitor is the same thing, but this happens for a sequence of monitors. Now, for example, considering you land on a particular URL of a site, and then you click on another link that takes you to another URL, and you perform this for a few steps. So the entire sequence of URLs that you have browsed can be recorded. Yes, the URL sequence monitoring requires a recorder tool to be installed in your machine, and this recorder tool will record this URL sequence and add them as monitors within Applications Manager to monitor them. Of course, we will be seeing why these monitors are important in the following slides. And we will also be discussing about the real browser and URL content monitoring more as we proceed ahead. So first, the URL monitor. Now, as you can see in this screen, on the right in this image, you can see the response time and the response time split up represented graphically as well as numerically in this image. The URL monitor is again particularly designed to make sure that a particular URL or a website delivers the performance that is expected of it. Now, for example, if you consider the response time split up right here, this information can actually be really useful to locate if there is an issue on the host server side, or if the issue is on the network side, or if there is an increased processing time in the server, which is why the performance is not optimal. So these kind of insights can really help you understand and take better decisions when it comes to maintaining your website. Let us move a slide ahead and take a look at the HTTPS URL sequence monitor. Now again, the URL sequence monitor, as we just spoke about, is a sequence of URLs. This sequence could be a set of URLs that you possibly expect any random user to browse through, and you can record them, add all of these URL sequences as monitors, and make sure that all of these URLs actually are performing optimally. So before we speak more about these monitors, let us quickly move to the Applications Manager UI and then try to configure the URL and the URL sequence monitors by ourselves. So right here, I am in the Monitors tab of Applications Manager, and right here under Web Server and Services, I should be able to find the HTTP URL monitor. However, what are we going to do now is we click on the Add New Monitor. This should allow us to create a new URL monitor. So once again, right under Web Server Services, I click on the HTTPS URL monitor. Now once I do this, I'm supposed to enter a display name. This could be any display name that you want, and then the URL address that you want to monitor, the polling interval, timeout, and remember you can also make further HTTP configurations by clicking on this option right here. Mention the request parameters if there are any, and the SSL versions that you are currently using, and then of course you can also choose the option of content check based upon the conditions mentioned here. So once this is done, and of course you can always choose to associate this particular monitor to any monitor group that you might already have. So once this is done, we click on the Add URL Monitor. So we get the success message which says the URL monitor has been successfully configured. So what we are going to do now is see the URL monitor from the inside. So while I click here in the HTTPS URL monitor, now remember the URL monitor today is the one that we just created. However, since it will take a while for data to start polling and appear, what I'm going to do is take an example of another URL monitor that I added earlier today for this example. So right here, you can see that the URL monitor is right here and the health is clear. And this is basically the overall summary of this particular URL monitor. And if we browse down, we find the information that we were seeing in the presentation only a couple of moments ago. The response time split up. Now this was the image that was used in the PPT. So you get the page size, the attributes. So, and remember, of course, for every single attribute, you can always configure thresholds and alarms, but then more about those in the coming weeks. All right, so this is the URL monitor. Now let us go back and try adding a URL sequence monitor. Now, again, I go to Web Server Services and I try adding the URL sequence monitor. And we are prompted to download and install the recorder tool. Now, as I had mentioned before, the URL sequence monitor requires the installation of this this recorder tool in order to capture the URL sequences and make them ready for monitoring within the product. So what I'm going to do is, since I already have downloaded the recorder tool, I am simply going to run that recorder tool, and then we are going to add a few URL sequence monitors and then see how to get information, that is metrics, from the URL sequence monitor. So right here is the URL recorder tool. Once you install and run the tool, it should open up in a window like this one. So let's take a few sample URL sequences. So here I am. So the first step that I take is land on the applications manager website, and then I click on, say, the demo option right here, and then I'd like to click on the get quote option. So we have performed 3 steps, right? We landed on the page, and then we clicked on demo option, and then subsequently on the get quote option. So let's click on preview and save. When we do that, we are prompted to enter the login credentials. So in this case, I am going to enter my host name, which is this one, the port name, and the username and password as well. Now make sure these values are entered correctly. Now you might be surprised to see that although we performed only 3 steps, that is 3 URLs we browsed, however there seem to be a lot of components here. Now this is because when we browse across different URLs, what the real browser recorder does is not only does it capture the URLs, it also captures all the underlying components within a URL. Of course, you can use the option filter URL to filter the type of extensions that you might want to have inside the product and ignore the rest. So what I'm going to do here is delete a few of these components. So for the sake of understanding, we don't have too much clutter, so we'll only use a few. All right, so what we can do now is enter display names for these URLs. So let me give some name. Of course, these names can be any name that you would like to call your monitors with. So I'm just giving some random names. Of course, you are free to change them as you see fit. So once we have named them, we click on next, and once again confirm that the details are correct. Name the URL sequence in any way you see fit, and then clicking on save should show us a success message shortly. Now we have used 4 or 5 URLs, I think, which might actually cause this saving process to take a while. However, if you have less number of URLs, this should happen in a jiffy. So let's just wait a few seconds until we see the success message right here and get the confirmation that the URL sequences have been added within the product. So there it is, the success message, though delayed, but has arrived correctly. So we'll close this since it is saved successfully now, and I'll close the recorder tool as well. However, let us go and verify if the sequence has been actually added within the product. So I click on the monitors tab, and under web server services, URL sequence, this should show us the URL sequence monitors that are there within the product, including the one that we just added. Now, if you notice here, the new sequence is what we had named it, and it is right here. However, let's take this one for example, because this one will have more data to talk about than this one, because we have only recently added it. So how does a URL sequence monitor look when seen from the monitor page? This is precisely how it looks. So again, the details mentioned here are more or less the same as a usual URL monitor, except you get this information for more URLs. As you can see, this is one URL and this is another. So there are just two sequences here and the corresponding information about those, including the response time split up and the attributes, the response time of individual URLs as well. So let's click on one particular URL monitor and see the inside of this. This should be exactly the same as a URL monitor that we discussed before. So here are all the information that you can get from the particular URL. So I believe the URL and URL sequence monitors have become clear now. So let's again quickly jump to the presentation and resume where we left off. So having seen the URL and URL sequence monitor, let us try to analyze just what makes these monitors important. Again, these are some of the problems in which these monitors could actually come in to be of real use. And now imagine if your site is not reachable due to many people accessing it, or the landing page is slow, or you receive unexpected errors while accessing a certain web page. Now an ideal scenario to imagine this could be, now the FIFA World Cup is going on, right? Now suppose a lot of people are accessing a server on a particular night to watch a particular match. So you can expect a lot of traffic to that particular site where people are constantly accessing to perhaps live stream the match or get recent updates or something like that. So you want to make sure that those people, and no matter how high the traffic is, your website is equipped to handle it and deliver that seamless service that the users of your website are actually looking at. So this was about the URL and URL sequence monitor. Let us now proceed to the next topic for the day, which would be how to run synthetic end user tests with the help of the end user monitor. Now, from the image that you can see right now, I think it should give you a fair idea about what the end user monitor is supposed to be doing. Now, the end user monitor again runs with an agent. This agent has to be deployed in a branch location. Now, this branch location could be either your own branch offices located in different parts of the world, or these could be your clients that are placed in different parts of the world. So these agents collect real-time metrics from these branch locations and then send them to the parent applications manager setup. I think this image here should help us understand better. Now, as you can see, these are two agents that I have named Texas and New York. So these two agents will constantly collect information from these locations and then send it back to my parent setup, wherein I can analyze the performance of my servers located in different parts of the world from the convenience of my desk and my parent applications manager setup. Now, this agent requires for any of these monitors here to be working in your setup. That is the DNS, the LDAP server, the mail server, the ping monitor, as well as the real browser. So if you have any of these 5 servers in your environment, the EUM agent should not be a worry. It will easily get installed, and once installed, it will start collecting metrics almost instantly. I think this part right here should help us understand better. Like, this agent is working alongside the DNS monitor, while this one is with the ping monitor. So this is about collecting metrics from different agents. However, if you notice that the real browser monitoring option is highlighted here. Now there is a specific reason for that. That is because the DNS monitor, the LDAP, and these two are perhaps familiar to users mostly. However, real browser monitoring is something that could offer some out-of-the-box value that might not otherwise be available in other products or features. So before we actually go ahead and see real browser monitoring, let me just quickly show you when you download and install the EUM agent right here from the build. If you click on the EUM tab and scroll down, you should be able to see a help card which allows you to go through and understand how the end user monitoring is supposed to work. Of course, we will be discussing about how it practically works during this webinar, but these information can also be of real use while you're actually working with these in your setup. And right here is the option to download the EUM agent. Now, once you download the EUM agent, as you can see here, the EUM agent will start running as a service in your device, and you have to make sure that the end user monitoring agent is running so as to make sure that data is collected and transmitted periodically. So let me minimize this, go back to the presentation, and start discussing about the real browser monitoring. Now, while you read the points mentioned about real browser monitoring in this slide, let me also explain alongside what value it adds. Now, when we talk about the first point, that is to launch a browser and mimic user interaction, this essentially means that imagine a user who has just landed on your website. Now, there could be n number of navigational path flows that a user can perhaps take in your website, right? Now, the journey of any user in your website varies significantly. Some people might land and then browse through a few parts of the website and then perhaps log out. So what the RBM does is allows you to mimic any user's interaction. Now, this could be any interaction that you would want to perform on your own that you think a user might possibly take. And then you can do this across geographies. That is, imagine if a user from, say, Japan is accessing your website, how is the experience for users from Japan? And then similarly, imagine somebody else trying to access your website from, say, Russia. So how is the experience when accessed from Russia? So for different parts of the world, how the experience is, this can also be monitored. Again, the third point emphasizes the fact that not only do these agents transmit real-time information about what is relevant, which metric is important, but also ensures that the data is just as recent as well. Also, the Real Browser Monitor within Applications Manager allows users to use the bundled Firefox browser within the product, or even go as far as to import their own Selenium test cases in order to collect metrics. A few more things about the Real Browser Monitor before we actually perform the Real Browser Monitoring operation with the product. So apart from the mentioned points, what the Real Browser Monitor additionally does is, remember we spoke about the URL sequence monitor wherein we monitor a sequence of URLs. Now with the Real Browser Monitor, it is not just about monitoring sequence of URLs, it is about monitoring different navigational journeys through a website that a user might likely have. So when you see this slide, you see the text that says record and playback from browsers. Now what this means is, let us assume this example. So I land on a site and then first I log in and then say, let's call it an e-commerce site. So I browse through different items in different categories and then I add a few of them to the cart and say I remove few of them from my cart and then I proceed to checkout. Now this is a typical journey that I have taken. So when you perform this journey with the help of the Real Browser Monitor, this is recorded with the help of the real browser recorder. And what the real browser recorder does is, after recording, it automatically creates custom scripts to play these transactions back. Now, every time you poll the monitor, the same navigational path flow is repeated in the background and metrics are generated to find out if the performance has been optimal. So you can actually perform these as a test before launching an app or a website, or even after you have a running website. You can perform these tests to make sure every possible path flow delivers the best possible experience to your users. We will see more of it, and that should allow us to understand it better. But then again, let us talk more about it before we move to the product. From this image right here, we can understand that, say, like you see three different colors of representations in this graph, right? And right here you can see that there are 3 steps. So for every single step that was taken, that is every transaction performed while in the site, you can get the health status, the page load, and the response time for every single step that was performed. And of course, as we have been emphasizing over and over again, this can be collected across different locations. Now, in this representative image, I have mentioned 2 agents, that is Texas and New York, which means that I know how my servers are performing, the servers that are running in Texas, and also the servers from New York. So here I have an overview, that is the transaction time, the response time. Of course, when I click them and go inside, I should be able to see more information. Now, the real browser monitor does not limit its features right here. What it does is it provides more insightful information, as you can see from this screen right here. Now, when we talk about taking a sequence of URLs or taking a path flow through the website, the real browser recorder takes screenshots of every transaction that we perform, or every page or web page that we land on. So what is the purpose of this screenshot ideally is what you can see in the form of the pie charts here. So when a particular screenshot is taken, as you can see from the leftmost image right here. So for this particular web page, what are the resources utilized along with the count of those resources utilized is present here. So here you can see that most of the component in this web page are images, while a fewer of them are HTML. Similarly, this is the resource count split up, which tells us the count, that is the total amount of HTML, CSS, script, or other elements present within this particular web page. Now, of course, if you see here, the number 3 is highlighted, which means that there have been 5 transactions and we are taking a look at the 3rd one. So for every transaction, a screenshot and a corresponding split up of resources is present here. Again, this can be really helpful in trying to determine which particular aspect could possibly be slowing down the responsiveness of your application, or whether or not you need to reallocate or redistribute these elements in the page so as to make sure that the experience is desirable. But what adds absolutely unmatched value with the real browser monitor is the waterfall model with which the information is represented. Now, when I say that this particular feature adds real value, it means that, as you can see from this tooltip right here, every single component that is present in your web page is analyzed, and the corresponding response time, latency, the duration for it to actually operate, all of these information can be found from the waterfall graph. So the next time you have a problem, you do not have to hunt for the problem. In fact, a simple quick analysis of the waterfall graph should immediately tell you and immediately lead you to the exact component that is causing a problem, and then give you enough time to troubleshoot it before your end users even begin to notice that there is an issue. So we have spoken a lot about the real browser monitor. Let us go back to the product and try configuring the real browser monitor right now. So right here, once again, when I click on the add new monitor and I click on the real browser monitor, I am prompted to download the recorder. Now if I click on this one right here, I should be able to download the real browser recorder. Now remember, the real browser monitor is a feature within the end user monitoring module, which means again, the end user monitoring agent has to be installed, and as we saw here, the end user monitoring agent is installed and is running. Now once you make sure that the agent is running, the next thing you should do is run the real browser recorder. What I have done is I have already downloaded the recorder, so let me just run it for you right here. So this is what the real browser recorder looks like. Now remember, you're not supposed to get confused between the URL sequence recorder and the real browser recorder. These are different recorders. So what I am doing now is accessing the real browser recorder. So let me enter the host name. Again, remember to be aware of the SSL numbers, the host numbers, all of these things, so you do not make mistakes here. And let me enter my username and password. Alright, so here I am. The recorder tool is now functioning. It opens the README file at the very beginning to help users understand how to make use of this. Again, you can take a look at the README when you find time. However, right now, let us start recording a few web pages and add them as monitors within the product. So once again, let me take manageengine.com and products. I click here. I click on applications manager. Okay, I'm right here. And again, let me click on a few more tabs so we have enough transactions to discuss about. So once I browse through a few URLs, now again, remember this particular activity we are doing is we are trying to mimic a possible journey that any user could take when he lands on a particular URL. For example, if I am a user and I happen to land here, so I click on demo, I click on get quote and things like that. So these can be captured. So I click on preview and save once I'm done. And so apparently we have performed 6 steps, that is from the point of landing to previewing and saving. There are 3 steps. And then again, it is not just about the steps that we performed. You can see that the actions that we performed when we were in that page are also covered here. Clicking on this arrow should actually give us the actions that we performed. And on the right is the time taken expressed in milliseconds. Once again, we can name these the way we want them to name. So I'm only naming one of it, so you know you can name all of them any way you see fit. Click on next. Give a name to this monitor. Let me give some random name. The page load timeout, now you can specify any timeout interval here, the poll frequency, and again the agents that you want to use in order to collect the metrics. So I'm using the agent that I have right now, that is Texas, and you can choose to perform a test playback right here. Instead, I'm going to save it right now and show how the monitor looks. So we get the success message and we are done. So I close the tool, I click on monitors, and again under web server services, I should be able to see the data. So here is the one we created. Again, since we only recently created it, there is not enough data to discuss about, let me open this one for you, which I have previously created for the purpose of explaining about the real browser monitor. So here is an agent, the Texas agent that we were just talking about. This agent has been collecting data and sending it over for our analysis. Let me click on the agent and check the performance overview for this particular agent has collected. So the load time, the transaction time, and the graph that we actually saw in the presentation with the individual split up of page load time and other components. So scrolling down gives us the screenshots that we were discussing about. Again, on our left is a screenshot of a particular page, and in the center is the resource split based upon size, and then here based upon the count. Now clicking on the tabs here should give us the other transactions, that is the other web pages that we visited and the corresponding resource split up. So page 3, page 4. So you get the information about everything. Now again, scrolling a bit further should give us the entire waterfall graph for each step. Now remember, we had selected step 1 here. So right here is the waterfall graph for step 1. You can see the same for the other steps as well. Now when we spoke about the waterfall model, remember we spoke about how much information can be seen from the tooltip. Let me just show you an example. So while I hover over a particular tooltip, you see that for this particular component, what has been the latency, the download time, the blocking time, and every other valuable metric that you should perhaps know to pinpoint and troubleshoot a problem right when it is a small issue and not a significant threat to business. So this was about the real browser monitor. I believe we are all familiar with the real browser monitor to some extent now. However, remember, if there is any doubt or anything you need assistance with at any point of time, you can put them in the question panel and our experts will be answering them. And remember, in case you need a personalized demo for your custom requirements, we'd be happy to assist with that as well. So again, going back to the presentation, let us discuss why we need an EUM feature before we take a look at the next topic. So the reasons why a user would require or an organization would require an EUM feature is to make sure that your business app performances can be monitored across geographies, as we have discussed already. And again, to measure multi-page workflows. Now remember, these are just some common examples I have taken of e-commerce, gaming, online banking, etc. Now this could also be relevant to many other industries, including government organizations or educational universities, wherein people constantly interact with the website to collect information or submit information. So if there is considerable traffic to your website, it only behoves you to make sure that the website is always monitored efficiently in order to deliver a smooth and optimal performance. Again, this should also help us to test web applications before launching them, or in fact, even during the course of their operation, we can test and make sure that different path flows are working properly. And then finally, testing critical pages and paths is also crucial. Now, a real-time example would be, say, the payments page of your website. Now, you wouldn't want any of your customers to get stuck on the payments page and wonder when the page will load and what is the next page that they'll possibly land on. So these kind of issues can easily be avoided, or the effects of such issues can easily be mitigated with the help of the EUM feature as a whole. So let us take a look at the next topic, that is website defacement. Now, website defacement is a popular term that we have been hearing for some time now. Now, what it essentially means is unauthorized accessing or alteration of any content in your website can be termed as website defacement. And with the help of the website content monitoring, Applications Manager helps you determine if any of the mentioned HTML elements in this slide are defaced without your permission. So a quick look at the product, and where we'll just try to add a website content monitor and then try to see how it works. So a website content monitor, let me just enter a display name and the domain URL. Now remember, any domain that I enter here is going to be the parent domain. Clicking on the get web pages option should list all the web pages that are linked from within this page. That is, if you try to inspect element for this page, you should be able to find all of this as href elements within HTML. So username, password if you have any, and then click on add monitors. Okay. Click on any of these and then you see the success message right here. So let's go and see a website content monitor that I have added previously, this one. And here you see that the health of this monitor is down. Now, why is it down precisely? Let us take a look at the underlying web pages. And if you see this particular web page, you can see the defaced script elements right here. This is precisely how it will be represented, that is with the original content as well as the modified content. So you can compare and know where and what exactly has been defaced. Other defaced elements. So right here you see another disclaimer that shows that the web page appears to have been modified. Now, which is why now we know the health status is down because of elements being defaced. Now, of course, defaced anchor and all the other text that we mentioned right here in the slide. So all of the HTML elements will be checked for defacement and be brought to your notice. So that's about the website content monitor or the website defacement monitor. Let's take a look at the last topic for the day, which is about web server and web services. Now let me show you quickly the different web servers and services that are supported within Applications Manager. Now this includes the popular Apache server, the IIS server, the reverse proxy Nginx, and all the other servers that you can see on your screen right now. And what are the metrics that we collect for these web servers? That is presented in this screen right here. Now remember, these are some of the important metrics, but these are not the only metrics. That is, among these and beyond these, Applications Manager collects a lot of other valuable insights that our users typically find very useful in delivering efficient performance from their web servers or services. So we will take a look at web servers, services, a few of them in the product before we approach the end of this webinar. So we are in the product right here. Let me click on monitors, and what I'm going to do is show you a few sample web server services that I have already added, say the Apache server. So let me take this Apache server and let's see the data inside this Apache server. Now remember, adding a web server is quite simple and just the same as adding any other monitor. So let us quickly see what the web server looks like. So for this Apache server, you can see data like the busy servers, the bytes transferred, and other attributes such as request details and response times, each with the option to configure thresholds and alarms so that you are instantly alerted in case your Apache server is down. Now similarly, let us take another web server, perhaps the Elasticsearch. Let us take a sample Elasticsearch monitor and just try to see the details present within the Elasticsearch monitor. Now the memory details, as you can see on your screen, is present right here in the form of the heap and non-heap memory, including the garbage collection and buffer pool details. Clicking on the thread pools should give us the details of every individual thread that is running along with its status, health, and whether or not it is active currently. So again, more information about the network is present in this tab, followed by the configuration details of your Elasticsearch monitor. So again, maybe let us take a look at one more, maybe the Nginx server. And this is a sample Nginx server wherein you can find the response time and other valuable information, including the requests based on the request per second or the request present in reading or writing state or even the waiting state. Again, you can pull out reports, you can configure thresholds, actions for all these monitor types, but then again, these are topics for the coming weeks, so we will not be discussing more about the admin actions, but limit ourselves to seeing the kind of valuable insights that we can receive with these monitors. So let us now take a sample web service and let us try to configure some SOAP requests as we saw in the slide before. Now, this is a sample web service that I have added previously, and you can see the monitor information, the summary over here, and the WSDL response time. Now, when we scroll down right here, we find the operation statistics, and apparently there is already an operation configured here. So what I'm going to do is try to add a new operation, select an operation from the existing one, so I could create a custom operation as well. So I'm going to name it something, and right here you see that this operation is to convert number to words. So let me test this operation. What I am going to do is replace this question mark right here with a number, say 21, and let us test this. And right here you see that the test worked, that is, the number has been represented in words. Let me close this and save it. Saving it should show another operation right here which we just added, and as you can see, the new op has been added here. So this is about adding SOAP operations within web servers. Let us take a look at the final topic, that is how to add REST API monitors. What I'm going to do now is show you a REST API monitor. So when I click on the monitor actions in edit monitor, you will find the fields that you will have to fill up during addition of this REST API monitor. Of course, these fields are all fields that you probably have information about. Now here you can choose the response type to be either text, XML or JSON. Remember, if you select text, you can perform content check for the response as well. For convenience today, I'm going to select JSON, and right here, this is the part that we have to be careful about. Now, how do we generate the REST API URL? For this, let us see the admin tab, and right here under the integration with portals option, you should be able to see the REST API key for APM. Now this is the APM REST API key. However, when you add the monitor, the REST API key looks something like this that I have added in this notepad. Now alongside the REST API key, you will require the resource or attribute ID for which you want the details to be shown. For that, what we will have to do is perhaps take any monitor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take an Oracle NoSQL monitor perhaps, click on it, and then click on any particular attribute. So for this particular attribute, when I click on the URL right here and paste it in this notepad, I should be able to see the attribute ID, which is right here, and similarly the resource ID, which is right here. So when I get the resource ID and attribute ID for a particular attribute of the server or application, it becomes easier for me to represent them as REST API monitors. So once again, going back to the REST API monitors, what happens in REST API monitors is, for example, if you have any particular attribute that you want to be displayed on a big screen or on a television in your organization, you can use the REST API monitor to pull that particular detail and then represent them. So before we end, finally, let us take a look at the response details. So right here, you can see that a particular attribute status is being represented. What we'll do is we'll try to add a new JSON schema perhaps. So let me click and select the whole JSON schema from here and paste it on an online JSON editor. And when I execute it, I get the response right here. Now what I'm going to do is say I want to display the type of machine this is that is present under array number 3. So what I do is I note down the attribute that is type, and I go back here, I add a new JSON schema, and the first step is to name what I want to call it, followed by the third array, and I wanted to see type. So once this is done, I update the JSON schema, and the next step I do is poll the monitor, and I should be able to see the attribute that I just added, that is AB, and you see the value that is correctly represented here. So this is about the REST API monitors as well. This brings us to the end of today's webinar.